everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Let's Talk podcast with me and David, aka Shamrock Balls, and we are getting into spooky season. And today we're doing a big one that's pretty big for both of us, celebrating 40 years, 4K Blu-ray coming out pretty damn soon, and a classic of the horror genre. And of course, it's in the 1980s. A Nightmare on Elm Street, directed by Wes Craven. And David, for me, this was my first horror experience. It's the first horror movie I ever saw. I remember renting this at Blockbuster on VHS with my brother and a bunch of cousins, and we were all way too young to be watching it.
Yeah.
I didn't get petrified by this, but my brother was and my cousins were. But for you, David, how did you first come to this movie?
Okay, so as you know, John, that I was a young child, just grew up throughout the 80s, and I can't remember the first time I ever heard of Freddy Krueger or knew of Freddy Krueger. He's just one of those 1980s icons, 80s movies. Freddy Krueger, I think, will be named in the same vein as, Indiana Jones or the DeLorean from Back to the Future. That's how popular Freddy Krueger was in the 80s. But as for my first time watching the movies, as I've said before, my parents didn't really let us watch horror movies. And I know that this was one that when I did get to a certain age that I was torturing them to try and watch. And they wouldn't let me. But I remember actually the first time I seen some of the Freddy Krueger movies, and I don't know which one it was. I can't remember. Was I like yourself with my cousins staying over in their house? Their parents were a wee bit more lenient in the letting us kids watch those type of things, and we would go to the video store, and we if we could find anyone, we didn't care which one it was, we would try and rent it, and we would go back to the house and watch it. But I do know that I don't think I seen the first one. In their house, it was some of the sequels. I remember actually me and my cousin going down to try and get money to rent. We thought we'll go and rent a few horror movies, but we had no money. And I remember calling to my granny's house and asking her, did she need anything done about the house? Did she need her garden cut or anything like that? So we could get around £2.50 to rent a VHS for a couple of nights, and she didn't need anything. But she gave us the money anyway. And the next thing I knew, my dad was then asking me why was I at my granny's house, asking did she need her garden cut and did she need anything done.
You're a good son, right? A good son?
Yeah, well, I think he kind of knew, I wasn't doing it out of the goodness out of my heart, you know what I mean? So getting back to the original, the first time I seen the original, I did see it on VHS, but I was a teenager. Yeah, so I was a very big fan of Freddy Krueger, and this I believe this was probably, I mean, obviously I'd seen movies like Jaws, and I'd seen Gremlins, and I'd seen Poltergeist, but as for an 18 horror movie, this franchise is probably the franchise which got me into the horror genre.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. This is the franchise that got me really into the horror genre. And one thing that's always funny, you brought them up, is the sequels to this. It even got a spin-off show. The first one still stands out as being by far the best, at least in my opinion. I really like Dream Warriors. I have my problems with 2 and 4 and 5, or at some points just kind of incoherent. I like Freddy's Dead a lot, but the original one is still such a classic. I mean, it's got Wes Craven, who directed not just this, but also in the 70s, he had Last House on the Left, and in the 1990s, he had Scream. So this guy somehow bangs out a classic every decade.
Yeah.
And I still think, even though Scream is very beloved, I still think this is probably his most beloved and recognizable film. Because like you said, Freddy Krueger's right up there with some of the, not just in the horror genre, I think he's in the big 3 of most recognizable horror villains. Him, Jason, Michael Myers, they're like on that top tier.
Yes.
But then you kind of go into like, he overlaps, like he almost gets to like Star Wars levels of fame because people know who Freddy Krueger is.
Yeah, 100%. And just touching on Freddy's Dead, I have a soft spot for Freddy's Dead because that came out in I think it was 1990, isn't that right?
So 90.
Yeah, so that was the first one that I remember being in cinemas, kind of thing. That was like the new one. That was the one that when you went in to rent a horror VHS, that was the new one. So I say, if you remember back in the day when you went into a VHS store, it was kind of like they had the comedies in one area, and then you had the dramas in one area, and then you had the horror in another area. So when you went in and you wanted to rent a Nightmare on Elm Street, that was the fresh new one. So I remember actually watching that one. So that might have been the first one. Might have been. I can't remember, but I do have a soft spot for it. But as you were saying there about Wes Craven, I mean, this is a guy who reinvented the horror genre in three separate occasions in three separate decades, and he done it with this film, A Nightmare on Elm Street. And I was actually thinking about this when I was watching it at the weekend, John, because I mean, I've seen this movie 25, 30 times now, and it is one of my favorite horror movies. It's up there. I think it's. I mean, if you consider Jaws a horror movie, I don't, but so Psycho's my favorite horror movie, and Nightmare on Elm Street to me is only second to that. And what he basically done here was by 1984, the slasher genre was in full swing. I mean, they had a formula on how to make these slasher movies off the back of Halloween, and what he done was he took a slasher villain and give it a different concept, and refreshed it by making it about this killer that kills people in their dreams. Look, watch this again, Neil, and I did think about the sequels, and I am a big fan of the full franchise, and I do love 1, 2, and 3. I think that 3 is the best sequel. I think it comes close to the original, but yes, the original to me is an out and out masterpiece, and I don't use that word lightly. When I say a film's a masterpiece, it is a masterpiece because it changed the genre, in my opinion. And created this new villain, and it touched on the culture and the zeitgeist of the time as well. And as I say, it started this whole new franchise. And as I was saying there as well about him putting a different spin on the slasher movie, what I like about this film as well is that it's not just a horror; it actually delves into the fantasy aspect of horror as well.
Yeah, this is like you said, it was very formulaic at the point, and this does have some of those cliches in here, but it takes it to the next level to the fact that, and this is what scared the hell out of people, is that he can come in your dreams. That's where he is, like, and that's you're never safe from sleeping. And this movie makes sure to show you that throughout, the fear of just going to sleep because you're gonna have a nightmare, and you don't wake up this time, and it puts the stakes right there. And it's funny that this movie, I caught something in there a lot like Psycho. You think that Tina in this movie is going
Mhm.
to be the protagonist. This is going to be our main girl, just like Janet Leigh in the original Psycho. And I wonder, and I assume Wes Craven being the director he is, because he always seems like, I don't know if you watch interviews with him, but he always just seems like very intelligent, very
Mhm.
aware, very down to earth. I'm sure that he was thinking that Psycho is, I'll mislead my audience just like he did, like Alfred Hitchcock did, and make them think that Tina's the lead, not Heather Langenkamp and Nancy's the lead.
Oh yes, I would say so, most definitely. And I'm near certain that has been mentioned, that it starts with Tina, and you do think that she is going to be the final girl, the heroine of the whole movie. Funny, when I was watching it the other night, I kind of thought to myself how similar Tina was made up to look like Janet Leigh with the hairstyle,
Blonde
and
hair.
but even just the style and the makeup, their eyebrows and stuff like that. So I've never heard anybody refer to the fact that they made her up to kind of remind you of Janet Leigh and Psycho. But I have no doubt about it that Wes Craven, that's what Wes Craven was doing. And what I was saying there as well, you were saying about the formulaic kind of like slasher movie. But what I do like about this as well, John, is that there's I think there's three killings in the whole film, not including uh what do you call her, Nancy's mother, who we don't really see dies, just turns into a skeleton and just goes down into the bed. But he kills them in very three different and interesting ways. So that's also a plus as well, rather than just seeing Freddy use his glove.
Even though they set the movie up right in the beginning with that glove, like as we're introduced, we see him built making the glove in the boiler room. But yeah, he doesn't like really he just kills Tina with the glove. And but the glove is a huge part of his character throughout, just scraping it along things. and this is where Robert Englund is just so good, is because you got a guy like Robert Englund who wasn't really known up until that point. One of my favorite stories about Robert Englund is how he was roommates with Mark Hamill, and he went to go try out to be, he was not cast, but he went to go audition for Luke Skywalker, and he was friends with Mark Hamill, roommates, and he recommended him. So it's funny enough that they both kind of have these two iconic characters, but they don't really have a second really recognizable character. Although I'll argue Mark Hamill with the Joker.
Yeah, that's true. But a lot of people probably would know Mark Hamill does the voice of the Joker in the animated series, and yes, you're big into that. It's not something. I mean, the Joker comes on the TV, the animated version. There's that many people that say, "Oh, it's Mark Hamill," and he does a great job at that. Whereas, like yeah, and whereas Luke Skywalker comes on the TV, you'll turn around and say, "Oh, that's Mark Hamill." But the funny thing is about Robert Englund, I actually remember like my dad and all saying like, when I talked about Freddy when I was very young and saying like, "Oh, Robert Englund," and I remember that name sticking in my head, Robert Englund. What a name, and yeah, and here was a guy who was had a wee bit of popularity through being on television, and he comes along and he steps into this character and just completely brings it to life. Even though Wes Craven designed the character, Robert Englund, what he brings to this character, the physicality, the menace, and all that is he's very theatrical. He's very over the top with his moves, and that's what I love about this Freddy. Now I've heard people say that they think that part two is the scariest Freddy. I think Freddy in part two is very dark, but I actually think that Freddy in the original for me is the scariest, because they do keep him hidden. They really do. Even though he's in the shadows in the second one, he is a wee bit more prominent in the second one, but in this one, he literally is more hidden. You see wee glimpses of him here and there. He comes in the frame from the side, or he comes from behind a bush or something like that, or you just see his glove. And when you do see him full on, he's not wisecracking. He's not giving big speeches. He's tormenting his victims. He's just having a wee giggle and a smile, or he's doing some sadistic move like cutting his fingers off or cutting his chest open to torture his victims before he kills them. But the thing is, you can always kind of feel his presence over the whole movie, that menace.
Yeah, he's always lurking around because none of them are safe. Like even Rod, like he goes to jail, and like you just said about how they hide him. When they show him walking through the jail cell and like everything, the camera's above him, so we never get a clear view of him doing it. Even with like opening scene with Tina, and these are some iconic stuff. It's very well in the shadows. He's from a long distance away. And
Yeah,
you could see where they took the character and why they took, like, you could just see the evolution of it. Like, he's cutting his fingers off and he's laughing at it, but he's not banging out one-liners like he gets to in 3. And, as the franchise goes forward, he's got the theatrics there, but he's also not a comedian at this point.
no, and a lot of that kind of theatrics that he's doing as well is to unnerve these victims, to unnerve the audience. It's not he's not doing it for laughs like he will end up doing in the sequels. And the funny thing you were saying there earlier about the shower and Psycho, the thing is about we know the effect that the shower scene had in Psycho on the audience. We know the effect the ocean had on the audience with Jaws. But yeah, this thing about everybody has to sleep. Not everybody has to go in the ocean. Not everybody has to take a shower. You maybe take a bath instead. But everybody
wash yourself, but you don't have to.
I mean, you don't have to. There's no law against it, but I would recommend doing it.
Yeah.
But no,
For everyone else's sake, just not to be rude, but you don't have to.
you don't have to, no. And but everybody has to sleep, and I think that's the scary thing about the thoughts of Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, there's no way to actually escape him. All you're really doing is kicking the can down the road as far as you can go. Eventually, your body will say, I have to sleep, and it will give out, and you will go into sleep. It's just, how do you get there? And that's what actually the big thing in this movie is just the mother just trying to get her to go to sleep, and how she tricks Nancy into eventually, she's like, you're going to go to sleep at some point. But lurking in the background, like this is stuff as a kid you don't pick up. And I mean, we'll obviously go more into it, is how you see her drinking, and you don't realize until until you get older, like she's drinking like right in the morning before she goes to work, and it's all just lurking there in the background. I just love that aspect, like how they
Yep.
know what's actually happening before even the audience realizes what's happening. The parents know. They're the first ones to know. The kids don't know, we don't know, but the parents know right away because they were there and they know what they did.
Yeah, and I just want to say when you said about the line that Marge, Nancy's mother, says there, she says there, you're going to get some sleep tonight if it kills me, and
Yep.
it literally does kill her. So, but I have to say, I was watching this movie the other night again for the first time in a couple of years, and I've seen this movie, as I said, John, don't know how many times, and I have to say that my one of my most favorite characters in this movie is Nancy's mum.
Mhm, mhm.
I think she's absolutely brilliant. Watching this again, I'm watching her performance. She's playing it like she's in a soap opera, but she kind of floats through the movie, and all her moves are so kind of dramatic and kind of, like when Nancy has a nightmare and wakes up screaming, and she comes running into her bedroom, she just comes through the door and the hair's all over the place. She's like, Nancy, are you okay? And you can assume that she's just woke up out of her own sleep, but she's also an alcoholic. So,
Yeah.
which is pretty sad, but at the same time, how this character play or how this actress plays this, I think is fantastic. And she has every scene I watch her, and I think she's absolutely brilliant. I like when Nancy comes home from and sees the bars on the windows, and when she comes in through the door, she shouts, "Mother!" And she just kind of glides into the hallway and turns and lights her later. And she says, why are the bars on the windows?" And she just goes, "Security."
That's
And it lights the cigarette and then glides towards the door to the basement and says, "Come down in the cellar, I'll tell you." And then
Oh my
just disappears down the cellar. But just those kind of moments with that actress, I think she's absolutely brilliant. And one of the other scenes I actually thought when they're in the dream clinic and she lights up a cigarette, and it's like, oh yeah, you wouldn't get away with that now. You couldn't smoke in a clinic, you can't smoke in a hospital, you can't smoke in an airplane or a cinema anymore.
You can't smoke anywhere anymore. They pretty much threw that out the window. But except on a cruise in the casino. That's always not forbidden for some reason.
Oh, okay. There we go in.
Found
I
that
didn't
out
know that.
Found that out actually pretty recently. I actually wasn't sure if I talked about it with you or Faith, but since you didn't know, that means that was Faith. But yeah, found that out. Apparently, on a cruise ship, they got the designated smoking areas, and then the casino. I guess they didn't want to take that away from everyone. But yeah, how she's just lighting up the cigarettes. But yeah, the first time you watch the movie, you don't realize like she's an alcoholic. The way she's
Yeah.
playing her character, you're like, this is ridiculous. But then you're like, well, if she's an alcoholic and she's always drunk, she's gonna always have this like slight calmness to her, and she is gonna kind of float in and out of scenes. But we only see, I think, three parents in this movie. We see, oh no,
Mhm,
we see Johnny Depp's parents too, but they
mhm,
all know what's going on, and they all kind of like went down a different path. Like John Saxon, you can understand maybe he broke up with Nancy's mom because she became such an alcoholic, or they couldn't live with, they dealt with that pain of what they did differently. And then you can see Johnny Depp's parents just not ignoring everything, being those kind of
mhm.
typical like 80s parents. And then you see Tina's mom at the very beginning, very similar to how Nancy's mom is. She's got a guy there, and she clearly doesn't give a shit about what her daughter's going through. Like,
Mhm,
you gotta stop
mhm,
having those nightmares, like she can control it.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Funny you should mention that about the parents and the homes that the kids come from, and it kind of got me thinking because we discussed in the Stakeout episode about Richard Dreyfuss's character, whether or not he was a recovering alcoholic, and that's how his marriage broke down. And it got me thinking when I was watching this the other night: is Marge's alcohol, is that a reaction to killing Freddie?
I
You
always
know,
thought it
was
was. I always thought she went down that darker path because of what they did, and because like how she's just so desperate to finally tell Nancy what's going on. Like, does it pick up more and more here because these killings start happening again, and she can't live with the guilt of what they
yeah,
did, and knowing the reasoning that her daughter's going through this, but she can't say it.
yeah, exactly, and that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, is her alcoholism? Is that a I can't even think of the bloody word. Is that reaction? But is that why she's an alcoholic? Is because of what they've done to Freddie? And then is that how then her marriage then broke down with John Saxon? You know what I mean? And I honestly don't think that the parents believe that Freddie's in their dreams. I think that the parents don't, well, Nancy's parents don't understand what is going on, or I know, and why she's bringing this man up, when he's supposedly long dead. I found it strange as well. It crossed my mind as well. That find it strange that any of the kids don't have any siblings. They don't have any brothers or sisters.
Well, I always wondered who the dead kids are because we don't really we're concentrating on these kids for of the parents who killed Freddy. Like that's what it was. Like all these parents, like Rod's parents, they all got together. They're the ones who finally killed Freddy at where he used to take his kids at the boiler room and everything like
Hmm.
that. Like and also, in the subtext there, something that they bring up in the remake, which is absolutely awful, is that he was pretty much probably molesting these kids too. And I think they changed
Yes.
that for the 1980s because it's more somehow it's less dark to kill kids than it is to molest kids. So they didn't want to bring it up in the movie. And I think it's honestly kind of works better in the movie's favor because it's just one less thing because it is a very dense movie, especially for how the length it is.
Yeah, and the thing is about it as well is that I noticed when I was watching this the other night, and I never really noticed it before. I was paying more attention to the movie. Is that when Nancy goes in, when John Saxon goes into the police station after Tina is killed, there's a load of missing children posters on the wall behind him, um, and there is also a deleted scene. Where, well, it's part of the scene when Marge shows Nancy the glove and tells her who Freddy Krueger was and that they had killed him and there was nothing to worry about. But there was more to that scene, that apparently Nancy had an older brother or sister, and that Freddy had killed her brother or sister. I can't remember who it was. But in regards to Freddy being a molester, I think that was the original intention for the movie. But I think, if I can remember correctly, John, in one of the documentaries I watched, there was a case in America, during the time when the film was getting into production, or maybe it was pre-production, about some kids being molested. It was a big high-profile case. It may have been a teacher or something at a school. I can't remember now, but they felt it was best that they took that out of the movie at that particular time.
Yeah, it definitely would be strange in a 1980s film, especially one that was supposed to be mainstream. You know, it's something that's a little bit more, especially at the time, taboo to talk about. Murder,
Mhm.
everyone can understand murder and why somebody would do that. So it simplifies it a little bit more.
Mhm. Well, I always took it anyway that that's what Freddy was.
Yeah,
Um,
me too. It feels that
yeah.
way. It just in the way he plays the character too. It kind of feels like that. He's a little like the way he's like very flamboyant and outgoing. He doesn't seem like they play him a little bit more actually. And once they get to the remake, a lot darker than I think it went too dark.
Yeah, I can't remember much about the remake, but I know that that was something that was contentious. And look, I don't know. I mean, is a murderer supposed to be more likable than a molester? I mean, to me, they're both despicable acts.
Yeah.
If he's killing children, I mean, it's both it's despicable no matter what. But I can understand that it's only a movie, and that
Yeah.
I know that people idolize Freddy, but I think when I would say idolize him, but what I like about Freddy Krueger is that he's an iconic horror villain, and the performance and the fact of how great the movie is. Um, and also, speaking of how great the movie is, and what I said about it being a masterpiece, is that, I mean, this movie was made on a shoestring budget as well. And
Yeah.
that's what's so great about it. Even watching it today, you could never tell that this movie was made for, I don't know, next to nothing. And that's how great Wes Craven done with, well, that's how great his script was, I think. And I think it's how great his direction is in the movie, and it's just how great the performances are, and the film crew and special effects crew. And another thing that I love about the film as well, John, is that I love how that it transitions from reality to dreams, and by the time it's transitioned into a dream, you don't know yourself.
Because some people don't like originally, if you go back and read the older reviews, some people didn't like that. They couldn't tell the difference between the dream and reality. But I love those transitions and just the
Yes.
little subtle hints. My favorite one being is in the school when we she first like starts dreaming. And I always notice the leaves in the hallway, like those, like how they're blowing around. I'm like, it's something that if you don't look for it, it's not noticeable. But then when you notice it, you're like, it's a dead giveaway because who would see leaves blowing around in a
Yeah.
dead hallway like that in a school? But yeah, it's not revealed really that it's a dream until the girl turns around.
And that's what I actually like about as well about the dreams in this as well is that um, the whole quality of it is a very dreamy kind of movie. You know, it feels like that. You've had maybe had dreams like that where they're a wee bit just surreal. Not like when it goes into the sequels when they have dreams and all of a sudden they're in a big gothic castle. Many
Yeah.
people really have dreams like that. I mean, there are people have dreams and they are basically, you know, in the setting of your own home or your work or your, you know what I mean? And then something happens and then you wake up and go, that was weird, that dream, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I like that. And yes, you're right about even in Tina's dream where she's murdered. I like how when she's in bed with Rod and she hears the window cracking and she goes to wake him up and you can just hear him snoring. And then she gets and looks out the window, and then there's like somebody throwing something at the window. At first, you think she's not dreaming, but it's when she starts to walk outside, and you go, and you're probably thinking to yourself, why is she going outside by herself in her feet? And then once Freddie appears, then you realize, oh, she's having a dream. And it's the same with Nancy in the school because she's sitting in the school and it's subtle because the guy gets up to read the Shakespeare and you see her with her hand on her head and she just blinks. And once she blinks, she's asleep. Just that wee blink. And that's when you hear Tina then saying, Nancy, Nancy. And then she sees Nancy in the body bag. And the guy's still reading the Shakespeare, but he's quoting something. I don't know if it is Shakespeare talking about bad dreams. But like when you have a dream and you have no control over your dream. She gets up and leaves the classroom. And what I like as well is that when she looks down the hall, she sees a pool of blood, and there's a blood trail to where Tina's lying at the bottom of the hallway, and she's being dragged invisibly down the hallway, and you see the arm fall out, and that goes hints back to when Nancy gets up to go to school that morning, and there's a news report on about Tina being murdered, and you see her arm fall off the trolley.
It's
Yeah.
nice. It's nice little, if you pay attention for those little things. And speaking of that thing with Tina, one thing, it's a little ahead of ourselves, but I love the sting and the score when the body gets picked up and moved. Like it's like a very electronic. It's hard to explain, but it happens a bunch of times in this movie.
Yeah, well, I was going to mention about the score, but one of the bits I want to mention first that I love about that hallway scene, which is that's probably one of my favorite. Well, I don't know if it's my favorite scene, but because I love the whole movie, but it is one of my favorite scenes. That dream that Nancy has, and when she runs in, you're saying about not knowing about how if she's dreaming or not, but see when she runs into the hall monitor, and she's wearing Freddy's jumper.
Yeah.
Like, how many people would notice that the first time you watch it? And then she knocks her over and says, where's your pass? And she says, screw your pass. And then you hear the voice, hey, Nancy. And then she turns back and she's got the glove on and she's like, no running in the hallway. I think that's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, the actual score in the movie, John, I love the score to the film as well. And what I actually find about this score is that it's very unnerving, but it's very atmospheric to the whole movie. But it also has themes to it as well. The actual main theme of the film, which is it's almost like a child's kind of lullaby.
Oh yeah, it's haunting that whole thing.
hmm But what I actually like as well about it is the sound design of the whole film too.
Oh, it's fantastic, the sound design of this movie. That's honestly the atmosphere of this movie is what does set it apart from the sequels, and it's a combination of the score, the atmosphere, and the dread that they built that this guy is inescapable, and which leads up like all the way to the end, which we'll get to. But like, how are you gonna beat this guy? Because what are you gonna do?
Mhm.
You got to set these rules up as we go on, because all we see early is that you can't beat him. He's picking them off one by one for the first half of the movie.
The funny thing is, what you say there is that how are you going to beat this guy? And one thing that Wes Craven does amazingly in this film is, um, it's like every good movie that you have to suspend your disbelief. They create a set of rules, and you can't break them rules. You've got to live within them rules. Once you break them rules, then you've lost the audience. You can set the rules, but you can't break them, and he
Mhm.
doesn't break them. So he sets the rules that you can drag things out of your dreams. Once again, one of the ones where she says to Nancy says to, funny enough, Johnny Depp about, I'm gonna go and look for somebody, and I want you just to watch me and wake me up if you see me acting strange or anything like that. And the next thing is she's walking to the jailhouse to see to check on Rod because he's thinks that maybe he's going to be killed next. And I love how she's walking down the street and she shouts back, "Glenn, are you still watching me?" And he comes from behind a tree and says, "Yeah, why?" And she says, "Just checking." And then he walks behind the tree again. She's dreaming that. That's absolutely brilliant. But when Freddy then attacks her and the alarm goes off and she wakes up, but when he's attacking her, Freddy in the dream rips open her pillow and the feathers go everywhere. But when she wakes up and Glenn jumps out the window, and that's when Nancy's mother comes through the door. You okay?
Yeah.
Thought I heard screaming there. And but when she says, "Oh, I just had a bad dream. I'm okay. I'm gonna go back to sleep," and she looks at the window and she shouts, "Glenn, are you still there?" You see a feather just dropping down past the window, and there's your first wee hint. The things. It's a bit weird. You go, "That's strange." There's a feather, and that's your hint that feather came out of the dream.
That's a good point, and that was the first, I guess, her first hint that she can drag him out, or that's the way we're gonna have to do it, and then kill him in the real world. But again, Johnny Depp being in this movie, very ahead of its time, and I always find that one scene very strange, actually, where he's like, he pops out and like you don't see him. Very similar to how Freddy pops out early in the movie from behind the pole, where you can't see half of him, and then he just somehow
Yeah,
is able to like defy physics because he's in a dream. Like, how she doesn't question that. Again, how you can't control your dreams. Like, she knows in her conscience that, he's supposed to be watching me, but she doesn't register that, we're walking down the street now and he's just down the block watching her. I love that. And again, Johnny Depp at such a young age, it's cool to see him in this movie because he's just kind of just the love interest. He's fine in it.
yeah, and I believe this was his first movie, and
Mhm.
I think he was accompanying a friend to audition, and then they asked him to audition, and then it was between him and another actor. I can't remember who it was now, and I think that Wes Craven was leaning towards the other actor, and it was Wes Craven's daughters that says, "No, you've got to cast Johnny Depp," and that's how he got the part. So he kind of fell into acting by mistake, and I don't think there's too many people remember or know that Depp's first movie was A Nightmare on Elm Street, and he never talks about it, and it should be a movie they should be proud of.
Yeah, I mean, he is one of the main characters, and he has probably, at least for me as a kid, was the most memorable death in this movie. Like, as I've gotten older, I'm like, it's a little ridiculous the amount of blood
Yeah,
that comes out, and if you look at the blood, it just looks like red water. And when it's still at the time, I'm telling you, I remember seeing that, and I never saw anything like that. I couldn't believe it. It made me think, is there that amount of blood in a human? Because when you watch it as a kid, you're not registering all the ridiculousness of this. But I was like, I just never saw anything like that. The blood pouring on the ceiling, and this kid just dying like that. And then, of course, the parents having to deal with that, and it's just leaking. They put a
yeah.
bucket down just because it's leaking through the floor. I'm like, that's so fucked up, and they're still looking at it.
Yeah, that's the thing too. It struck me too again, John, when I was watching this because like I've mentioned several times before when we were doing about movies that we love. I mean, I grew up watching these movies, and well, say grew up. I probably didn't see this one until I was like 16 or 17. But I mean, I've seen the sequels when I was younger, and the thing was that you see them so many times that when I sit down and analyze them to do the pod, the humor, the dark humor in this, and the humor in this movie is absolutely brilliant. You don't realize how humorous it actually is, and that whole scene with Johnny Depp being killed is ridiculous. About the amount of blood. Apparently, it was Craven's nod to The Shining. He thought, well, if Stanley Kubrick can do it, I can do it. But I love when the ambulance pulls up and John Saxon pulls up and you see them pulling the stretcher out of the back of the ambulance and you hear a police officer saying it's not a stretcher you need, it's a mop.
Yeah, because it literally just turned in the blood. There's nothing there, and they don't really even reference like how the hell that is. Like, it's just we got to buy into the fact that these deaths and how they're dying, these kids, it's crazy. This is just another one of them. That's why John Saxon finally is starting to come around and believing it.
Yeah, and that's the thing too as well is is the ridiculousness of it, but it's the humor as well before that of Johnny Depp as well when Nancy's telling Johnny Depp the plan, saying, I meet me at 12, I'm gonna go to sleep, I'm gonna drag him out of a dream, and then you hit the guy, hit the guy, and he's like, well, what am I going to hit him with? And she's like, I don't know. I'm sure you have a baseball bat. You're a jock, aren't you? And when he comes off the phone, he's like, baseball bats and boogeyman at 12 midnight. He just doesn't believe it like himself. And I love how she says as well. Then she says, if he gets me, you're next. And he's like, what? Who, me? Who would want to kill me?
Yeah, he's a little
So
bit of like a doof.
yeah, and I love how his mother comes in and says, "No, he's listening to his music with his earphones on and has the TV on." And she says, "How can you hear? How can you hear what you're watching?" And then he says, "Miss Nude America's coming on," and he says, who cares what she's got to say?"
Such a typical teenager.
Yeah, in the 80s, So all that humor, even his dad as well. I love his dad. He's standing at the door. I standing looking up at Nancy's window, and he's like, "You know what? See that girl? That girl's a lunatic, and I don't want her hanging about with our son." And then she phones the house, and he's just like, the mother picks up the phone, and he's like, "Who is it?" And the mother's like, "It's Nancy. What does she want us this time?" And she's like, "Wants to speak to Glenn. Give me that phone." Glenn's in bed. Doesn't matter. I can't talk, guy. Puts the phone down, and he's like, "That's how you deal with these kids." But as a matter of fact, and takes it off the hook.
Another thing, if someone watched this now, there's a couple things in that scene that give away how old this movie is. Leaving the phone off the hook because no one can call if the phone's not on the hook.
Yep.
And also similar in Poltergeist. I don't know if this happened in Ireland. This never happened to me, but I asked my dad, who was around at that time, if the Star Spangled Banner played, and then that's it. The TVs were just off for the night, and this happens.
Yeah.
In the movie, just that plays, and then that's it. The TVs were done. You couldn't watch anything else. There was no streaming or anything.
That's right, 100%. Till the next morning, it used to just be at fuzzy screen to the next day once it went off. 100%. And funny, that's what I was actually thinking myself when Nancy was phoning the house phone. I was like, oh God, gone. Those days are long gone. If you want to contact your friend or whoever it may be, you could message their mobile phone or phone their mobile phone.
You can't hide anymore. If you don't want to talk to somebody, like you have to put in the work now to ignore them, and then you have to make up a plan as to why you ignored them because everyone's got a phone in their pocket. Back then, it's
Yeah.
like I was at work all day. I couldn't talk.
Yeah, I wasn't near a payphone.
Yeah, there was no way I could call. And how am I supposed to know you trying to get in contact with me anyway?
Yeah, exactly.
It's such a different time. It's crazy. And then but that does make these movies more believable. Nowadays, we have to actually we have to try and make a way for people not to use their cell phones. We have to there's no service because that solves a lot of the problems in these movies.
Yeah, exactly. Or the battery goes dead or something, or their phone breaks,
Yeah.
something along those lines.
Yeah, no one's gonna get lost now with a GPS in their pocket.
No.
I know. We are so reliant on this technology. Again, 1984. We were warned by a guy who loves technology, James Cameron.
Yep, well, this was the same year as the Terminator as well, John. So
Oh, it's unbelievable. But you were talking about it earlier with the practical effects. I watched one of the documentaries that's on the movies that made us, and they actually have the guy who did all the practical effects, and they asked him, "Why do you think he got hired?" He's like, "Well, they had no money, and I was cheap." Because New Line Cinema, this was their first movie, is the house that Freddie built. Bob Shea, basically put everything on the line for this movie. The effects at points. We talk about the ridiculous Johnny Depp effect. They wanted to get more use out of that rotating room that they built for the Tina death. You got to. One thing people don't realize is movies do cost money to make, and if you could reuse a thing like that costs them a lot of money to, why not double up on it and get two good kills out of it?
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things I think is great about this film as well. Even though it's 40 years old and it was made on a shoestring budget, none of the effects to me look dated. Any of the optical effects, any of the trickery they used. Like, for example, you have Tina's death when Freddy's running down the alleyway towards her. That's not Robert Englund on the left-hand side of the screen. That was somebody else. And then as she runs and the camera swings around, Robert Englund's standing waiting for her, and he goes like that. Or when he comes from behind a tree, it's probably just like a cardboard cutout of a tree, where he's standing behind it and coming out. So, but the left hand side of the cardboard is like it's not the tree, it's part of the grounds, but he's hiding behind it, and it's lit in a particular way that you don't realize that it happens so quick. So I think a lot of the special effects are hold up to this day in this movie. the puppetry, the blood effects, and as you say, the rotating room which they used, which they built on a gimbal, which I believe they used in movies many decades before. I think it was like Fred Astaire movies where he was dancing around a room. So they done it with this, with Tina's death. So it looked as if she was being dragged up onto the ceiling, and they just rotate the room. And then, as you say, they then reused that room, redecorated it for Glenn's room or Johnny Depp's bedroom, so they could tip the blood in. So what you see is that when it's going up, it's actually the camera's upside down. It's actually just filling down and hitting the actual ground, which is the ceiling, made up to look like the ceiling.
Yeah, I actually, and the effects supervisor tells the story. He's like, if you pay close attention, it's starting to fill up and flip over right before they cut because they started to lose it right at the very end because they didn't plan for that amount of weight with the water.
Yeah, well, from what I'm led to believe, it actually did short the electrics.
Oh, and the ceiling, yeah, but because that's an actual live wire and the light.
Yeah, they hit it with too much. They didn't really. It started to rock, you know. They didn't realize, but yeah. I mean, like even just I think Freddy's makeup get better. Well, that's
Yeah.
debatable. Me personally, what I mean is that this. I think a lot of people think his makeup in the second movie is the best. And I would tend to agree. It does look his best. This original one has a certain look about it, which they never captured again, especially with the sweater just having the red arms, which for some reason they changed the full sweater to stripes. I don't understand why, or hoops. But no, I think that his makeup, I think obviously as the movie's on, they got a wee bit more budget, and I think that the methods they were using to do the makeup got better. But even just the practicality of the glove and the sweater and the makeup and the hat, I mean, that doesn't date. It still looks great.
No, it still looks phenomenal. I always thought that the first one had the best in every single category. You know, some of the effects, it's funny. I was wondering if you noticed this because apparently Bob Shea and Wes Craven got in a big fight over one of the effects that made it into the movie. Wes Craven still hates is when she's going up the stairs and she's stepping in it and they turn into liquid, like that was oatmeal. Bob
Yeah.
Shea loved that, and Wes Craven apparently hated it, but I never really thought too much on it.
Yeah, well, apparently, that I was the making of. Apparently, that particular day they were filming that because they were running out of money. Bob Shea was on set over Wes Craven's shoulder saying, "Don't film it. Cut this scene. We don't need it." And because Bob Shea thought it up, Wes Craven wanted it in the film, and because he liked it, and he said to Bob Shea, "Well, you direct this scene because you created this, didn't you?" So he felt that he had to then.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah, I remember that now where it's like, well, then you direct the scene exactly. Like it's funny though, but yeah, because they really had no money, and for them to have to like really penny pinch the whole way, Bob Shade like was securing money as they were going, and they had to convince people not to pay him for like 2 weeks. Like that's like guerrilla filmmaking at its best, and to end up with a classic film like this that really is considered, it's in the National Library of Congress for being
Yeah.
culturally significant. It's unbelievable. Like, and it's just crazy to think that we have movies now that cost $200 million to make, and you're like, this looks like shit. And then this movie's made on a shoestring budget, and it still holds up.
Yeah, I mean, look, you expect that maybe. I mean, if a low budget movie's made 40 years ago and it becomes a big success, you expect to watch it decades later and see all the puppetry, you know, all the fake, all the, you know what I mean, all the fakeness of it, or the dated special effects. And I really don't see it with this movie. And maybe it's because of the nature of the movie, because you know, Freddy is in the dream world, and you can get away with it a wee bit more. You can suspend your disbelief a wee bit more. But I don't. I actually think that everything was done practical because they had to do it practical. They had no money to go anywhere else, and they had to work hard to make all these effects work. And that includes even the bathtub scene, which I think is an absolutely classic scene where Nancy gets dragged down into the bathtub, and what they done, you know, how they had the arm coming out of the bathtub and stuff like that, where they took a hole out of the bathtub and built a tank below it, so the special effects guy could put his hand up with the glove in between Nancy's legs, and then when the shots underneath where she's being dragged down from the bathtub was done in a swimming pool with divers and a camera, and they put like black felt over the swimming pool with a bath shape cut out, so when the camera's up and you see the light coming through, it's like she's being dragged further down under the bathtub. All that still holds up today, and the you know, simple things but just real craftsmanship, you know, real movie making, which is part of the reason I love movie making back in those days more than the CGI. Um,
Oh, 100%. That's always an argument. I'll die on that hill. I'm like, yeah, okay, if you're looking for it, you might be like, oh, that looks stupid. Like when he cuts his fingers off, clearly it's just it's a fake hand, and you got somebody there with a pump that pushes the blood, the green blood out right away like that. But yeah, and then at the end, it's a really bad effect when they suck Nancy's mom through the window.
yeah,
But again, I still would take that 100 times over bad CGI.
yeah, 100%. And just what you were saying there about what Bob Shea done to get this film made. Um, you know, um, Originally Wes Craven didn't want New Line to make the movie because he knew it would be such they wouldn't be able to raise the money that he needed. He thought to make the movie, but no other studio wanted this movie, so he went back to Bob because Bob Shea really wanted it. And fair play to him, he went out there and he got the money and he got it made. Um, One thing about the ending, I know that there was a big debate between Wes Craven and Bob Shea about the ending, and they compromised. I think the original ending from Wes Craven was that it was more of a happier ending. I think that basically that they drove off together in the car, and it was Bob Shea that says, "No, you gotta give us another scare."
Yeah, how do you feel about the ending? Because I've always been very conflicted on it. Like, again, it's just the kind of movie. Like, how do you end this type of movie? Like, you kill him. Like, yeah, they pretty much send it off, but like, I do like it ending with a cliffhanger because we know that the character comes back, and obviously, it's an '80s cliche that these characters just can't die. But so,
Mhm,
how do you end these kinds of movies? And I think they ended
mhm,
it pretty well. I've never really run into an issue. I like
mhm.
the last scare.
Do you know what? I was actually watched this with a friend the other night, and they couldn't believe that it just ended. They were like, yeah, they were like, is that it? And it brought back a memory because I remember the first time I watched this movie, I was so disappointed that it just ended. And I've seen it so many times, and because there's sequels, I'm just used to it. However, this is something that I wanted to bring up with you and discuss with you. For me, this is a perfect movie. It's perfect to me, like Psycho's perfect, or Jaws is perfect, or The Terminator is perfect, right? I couldn't imagine it ending any other way. The thing is, obviously, a lot of horror movies, they want to end on as you say, a cliffhanger. They want to end on a downbeat ending. I mean, we've seen that with Invasion of the Body Snatchers. We've seen it with the likes of what was the other one I was going to say there?
Friday the 13th gives you the big giant jump at the end, the original.
Yeah, we've seen it with other horror movies, and I suppose this is doing the same thing. Pet Cemetery as well. That's another one. The book came out in '83, and that ended on a downer, and then the movie done it obviously in '89. Um, but this is the question I wanted to ask you, and I basically seen this come up on chat rooms and on the internet and stuff like that. There's people that believe that the whole movie is a dream. What do you think? I have a theory, but I just want you to know what you think.
I would believe that if like the ending of the movie kind of was like a happier ending, because then it's like, okay, how did they? Because I always question how is it like literally, okay, that's it. Everything we just saw, we're supposed to believe like was another dream, or she's somehow able to reverse what has happened, because it's just like, I'm not afraid of you. And then he just kind of goes at her, and then she just walks out the door, and it's the next day of school. So it's like, did everything we just see, was that in a dream, or did she reverse it? I've always kind of believed that, like, because it's tough because they don't even address it once we get to Halloween 3 when Heather Langenkamp comes back. Exactly what we're seeing at the very end of this movie. I always took it more as the very end of this movie was a dream, and that like she probably wakes up and they're still all dead, including her mother, and it's just still her and John Saxon, and she was just able to beat him, and that was it, and put him away until eventually she moves out, and we end up with Nightmare too.
Yeah. Well, taking the sequels out of the equation, right? Let's just
Yeah.
take them out of the equation. I think you're right. To a certain extent, I think that she went to sleep to get drag Freddy out of her dream, and she never woke up. So I think there's a point where she goes to sleep and she doesn't wake up again, and that point is after Johnny Depp's death. She phones her dad and she says, "Will you come and come over here at whatever it was, 12:30 or something, knock a door down. And he's like, yeah, I'll be there. And then she tucks her mother in the bed and says, I love you. And then she sets her alarm and she gets in the bed. And then you see her thinking about some of the things that some of the other characters said. And then she's in the dream world. And I think from that point on, that's when the last time she goes to sleep. Because I'm watching it, and it's been something that I wanted to do for a while, John, was to watch the movie, because I've had that in my head, because I've seen people talk about, the whole movie's a dream and blah, blah, blah. And I always kind of thought, no, I think the ending is just the whole ending's the dream. That the likes of her friends have been killed. Freddy is in their dreams. He is killing them. There's been dreams throughout, which we've seen. The Tina's dreams. We've seen Nancy's earlier. We've seen Nancy's dreams. But when she goes to sleep that time, she doesn't wake up. And so I've been watching it. I watched it again last night, and I'm saying I'm going to watch out for this. Now, it could be just continuity errors, but I don't believe it is. I believe it's done intentional. When she goes to sleep that time, what I just mentioned, and she goes through the dream world, and I love how she goes through the dream world, and Freddy's not falling for it. He's too smart for it. He's not coming out straight away. And she then goes down into his boiler room, and she starts finding some of the artifacts that her friends had or died with. I like how you see the cross, Tina's cross, but say Tina's cross, there's the switchblade, and then eventually she finds the bloody earphones from Glenn. But the thing is, eventually when and she screams about, Kruger, reveal yourself. Now I can't remember if she completely stops the watch or she just amends the time on it. But when Freddy comes out, now this is a continuity error, he's wearing his hat. But then you see him for the next scene, his hat's not on because she has the hat. Anyway, but the thing is, when she falls and she lands on the roses that were outside the house. I love how Freddy pulls the roses back and says, "Hey, Nancy." But do you notice when she runs and jumps at him, you hear, as I said with the sound design, when she runs and jumps at him, you hear him kind of go, "Whoop." As if he's grabbing her. But the next thing is her alarm goes off, and when she wakes up, she's not under the covers. She's lying on top of the bed, and the bed is freshly made. But she was on. But I'm there certain she was under the covers when she went to sleep. So then we have basically then where she she gets up, you can hear the sirens outside, and she says, "Oh, I guess I am crazy." And he jumps up from behind her as if she's dragged him out of the dream. And then she runs outside and all the booby traps go off, which I think is quite funny, when she's beating him, which is, I
was going to ask you, what do you think? Do you think this inspired Home Alone a few years later? Because, I mean, it's a very similar scene, very similar montage, setting the house up.
Yeah, and I love that scene where it kind of sets up before that, where she's speaking to Johnny Depp. And Johnny Depp, for some reason, has got all this knowledge about dreams and taking power away in dreams and all this. I'm like, how does this guy know all this? Well, I got a
position, so someone's got to give it.
Yeah, we need a spin-off movie here. But anyway, so basically, what I'm trying to get to is that she then puts him on fire. Right down in the basement, and she runs up. The house is on fire, and she's saying she can't get out because the door's locked. That's another great scene with her mum, where she says about where's the key, and she's like locked. Yeah. But the thing is, then she smashes the window and shouts to the cop, "Get my dad, you asshole!" And he's like, "I suppose I may go and get the lieutenant." But anyway, they come into the house. And she sees the footprints going up the stairs, and she runs up the stairs and sees Freddy on top of her mum, strangling her mum, and then he hits him with a chair, and then the dad runs in and throws the blankets over Freddy. But when he pulls the blankets back, the bed's opened up, and there's a skeleton going down. That's not the real. That's absolutely brilliant effects. But John, that's not the real world.
No, that doesn't happen. Well, I always wondered how that was going on, but I thought that was a way for okay, now John Saxon has to believe what's going on. So that's how I kind of always looked at that as how could that happen? I always questioned what happened there? How did that happen?
Yeah, but my explanation is that she's still dreaming. She hasn't pulled him out of her dream. She's not awake. And the other thing that tells me that she's not awake is because of John Saxon's reaction. He's silent. And then she says, "Can you just leave me?" And he turns and he walks out. It's weird. It's
It is.
all weird. And the thing is, but you do hear the other cop saying to John Saxon, "Are you okay?" And he says, "No, I'm not. I'm not okay." You can faintly hear it in the background, but the door then closes. Right? That's all. To me, that's all not real world. And then she turns her back. She does what Glenn tells her, and Freddy comes out of the sheets. But when Freddy disappears, she opens the door, and all of a sudden, it's a brand new day. So she hasn't woke up. She hasn't put her clothes on. She hasn't went downstairs and opened the door to go. She's just walked through the door. She's still dreaming. And not only that, the mother then comes walking out and, like a good dream, says, it's bright. It'll clear up. I'm going to stop drinking.
Yeah.
It's all a dream. She's still dreaming, and not. Do you not watch her? She looks at her arm, and her arm's no longer cut anymore. And she goes like that. She looks at her arm; it's no longer cut. And then, of course, the dream isn't over, because when she gets in the car, we're like, what a good dream. Her mother stopped drinking. The sun's came out. She's wearing lovely, lovely, nice clothes. You see her looking at the clothes and all. And then the car pulls up and all her friends are still alive. And even Tina and all grabs her and says, "You're looking good, kiddo." And then the next thing is that the car comes up with the stripes, and then she realizes, no, I'm still dreaming. Freddy's got me. And then you see the mother put her through the thing. In other words, Freddy got her too. That's what I believe. Now, I think that if you watch it like that, you can see all the clues there, in my opinion, anyway.
Well, it definitely makes more sense in the way you're doing it, because I always thought that they were trying to like kind of misdirect us a little bit with the confusion, because it does, especially with John Saxton's character, it always threw me off. And then like once like she just says, "I'm not afraid of him," like, and that's supposed to be like that's it. That's how they're gonna win. It's just she turns her back on him, because first of all, there's no way she's not afraid, and then that's just like it does seem more likely, especially when he goes at her, he disappears. Like just
Yes.
so that you can look at it as that that's just him messing around with her one more time before the big, like, I'll let her get this little happy ending, and then I'll reveal, like, no, you're still dreaming.
Yeah, and exactly. And that's, maybe it does kind of work, right?
Yeah.
But he's not dead, because he's never had anybody do that to him before. Turn his back and say, "You're not real. You're dead. This is just a dream." Because I love how he even goes like, "You were what?" But when he disappears, I love how you hear him just fall. Oh!
Like
But
he's gonna scream, like, like, where does he go? Where did he go?
back to hell. But no, that's what I take from it. I believe that it's just still dreaming. Now, obviously, earlier on, people could say, well, this still ties into the theory that the whole movie was one big long dream, because I was kind of trying to watch out for when you see the mist. When you see the mist, it kind of gives you a clue that it's the dream. And at the very start of the movie, when the girls are doing the skip rope song, there's mist, and then you see them same girls at the very end where there's mist, like a bookend, as if this is the start of the dream, this is the end of the dream. But no, I think that when, for example, when she's awake and the phone starts ringing after she's pulled out of the wall, "I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy."
The phone.
The phone, yeah. But there's a name for that. It's like people that have had loads of lack of sleep. It's like was it micro sleeps or something they have? They're still awake, but their brains could be micro sleeping, so they kind of start seeping into the real world. I think they explain it more in Freddy versus Jason to talk about it.
Yeah, they do talk about the micro sleeping in Freddy versus Jason, because that becomes a big part of that is them dreaming, and not dreaming and not getting. They start medicating them. A lot of stuff they actually took from the original Nightmare for Freddy versus Jason, which I actually like.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, this is maybe a chat for a different day, but that is why a lot of people didn't like the second movie, because as I explained earlier, about you're making rules and then you're breaking them, and they broke the rules in the second movie. But to be honest, if we do Nightmare 2 at some stage, I have my reasonings for what's happening, what is happening in my mind, rather than maybe what the filmmakers intended.
Yeah, like I told you, Nightmare 2 is one of those movies I try and rewatch all the time, and then I always forget that I don't like the movie. Like, I'm actually in the mood to rewatch Nightmare 2 just because I just finished Nightmare 1. Usually what I'll do is I'll go Nightmare 1, then I'll skip to 3, and then sometimes I'll watch like 4 and 5 and 6, but a lot of times every year I just watch 1, 3, and Freddy's Dead, because again,
Yeah.
I love Freddy's Dead, even though it's a comedy.
Yeah, well, I think that 3 is more of a direct sequel to 1. I can't, but I, in my mind, 2, I like 2. 2's like a what would you call it, a prelude to 3. It's almost like she took Freddy's power. If you believe that, okay, if you take like a Nightmare on Elm Street 1 as an isolated movie, you can make up any kind of ending. Does Nancy wake up, or does she not wake up at all? No, I mean, does Freddy get her? But when you watch Nightmare 3, you know that obviously, if you believe that she was dreaming for the last part of the movie, she did wake up and survive. She mentions in Nightmare 3 that her mother died, and I can't remember if she mentions how, right? And of course, John Saxon became an alcoholic, just like Marge. But I always think of Nightmare 2 as kind of like, because she took Freddy's power away from him. If you believe that, right? She took his power away. He needed to get his power back. He needed to become strong again. And how he does that is to kill. And he was using Jesse's body to kill to get his power back.
Yep. Which, 2 has one of the most iconic scenes in the entire franchise, which is the pool scene. I love seeing that. And the opening's great too. At least off the top of my head, I love that.
Well, I love Nightmare 2. I've always loved Nightmare 2. It's always been one of my favorites, and it has my favorite line in Nightmare 2 at the pool party where he's tired.
My children now, right?
No. It's before that. No, it's when they're at the pool party and he jumps out and he's terrorizing all the kids at the pool party, and they're running, and he's slicing them, and he's flipping bloody hot dog tables over and drinks going everywhere. And then this wannabe hero comes out of the crowd and says to Freddy, "Calm down, man. Calm down." And you see Freddy kind of like looking at him like, who the fuck's this guy? What the fuck's he saying to me? And he's like, "We're here to help you." And then Freddy just says to him, "Help yourself, fucker." And then just slices him, throws him over or something.
That is a great iconic. I mean, I love the entire pool party scene. I've just a little bit on Nightmare 2. I don't know if you've seen I think it's called Scream Queen, talking about Nightmare 2 and the lead character. And if
I haven't seen it.
No, so like I don't know if you are aware that the lead actor who plays him, he was a gay guy.
Yes.
And he went out and like pretty much, he got ostracized, had his whole career ruined. But if you look at the movie through the prism of it's about a kid coming out as gay, and that's why at the very end, when he comes out of Freddy, and now he's being like it was Freddy and him all along, you can look at it as him coming out. Through that, I don't know if you've ever looked at the movie through that prism that they try and explain, but I do think that adds to the movie. But I just never was able to get into the movie overall, other than certain scenes. But again, I'm due for a rewatch. It's about 4 years, so it's due for me to watch it and for me to say, "Oh, I still don't like it," but we'll see.
Yep, you should definitely give it another go, mate. Because I actually look, I think 2 might have been one of those ones that I rented and watched. One of the first Freddy ones I ever watched, and the whole gay subtext I didn't get it. I was too young to understand. And then I had the first 3 on original VHS, which I still have, so I do in the attic. 3 lovely nice VHSs. It was 1, 2, and 3. They were the ones I used to watch all the time. And then it wasn't until years later they just start noticing the gay subtext throughout the movie, and this was maybe an allegory for a kid, a teenager who was actually having these gay feelings, and he didn't know how to kind of react to what his body was telling him. And of course, there is this thought now that Freddy knew this, and Freddy was playing with him as well, because he knew deep down what he was. He was gay. He wasn't straight, and the kid didn't know how to come to terms with this. Of course, yeah. I mean, I wasn't an idiot either. I did find it strange that when I was watching it, he goes to this like, what was it, the S&M kind of bar, and his school teacher's there in leather, and then brings him back to the gym and has him working out, and then he's killed in the shower in a really kind of homoerotic way, and of course there's all that stuff earlier on. It's probably been a while since you've been watching it, where they actually refer to the gym coach as being gay. And a bit of a sadist and torturing the kids, making them out there doing press-ups and things like that. So I did notice that at the time when I was younger, going, it's a bit weird, but I didn't notice there's other gay subtext throughout the movie. Obviously his mate as well, saying to him, because when Jesse, you call the character Jesse, when Freddy's taking over his body, and he starts getting it on with Lisa, the girl Lisa, and they're in the cabana and they're kissing, but then this big lizard tongue comes out and he has to hide it, and he leaves, and she can't understand why she's left or why he's left, and he goes to his friend's house, and
Oh yeah.
he says something on the lines of something's trying to get in my body, and he says, yeah. Her name's Lisa, and she's over at the cabana. But you want to spend the night with me?
Yeah. Because he knows his friend.
But no, listen, it's one we should do at some stage. Mate, I
Yeah,
actually
I think we should
really like
save this
part two.
conversation, like, punt it down the
Yeah,
road because there is a lot to talk about Nightmare 2, and,
yeah,
this movie on its own in a bubble is an all-time classic that, that's why we're here analyzing it today, because just on its own, because after this, Wes Craven leaves the franchise and doesn't even come back until A New Nightmare, and even makes reference and Scream about the sequels. Like, I think I remember who has a passing line about, yeah, the first one was good, but the sequels suck. So,
yeah, exactly. And from what I'm led to believe is that Wes Craven made this movie, so there wasn't supposed to be any sequels. Do you know what I mean? And that was the whole thing that Bob Shea wanted to put Freddy in at the very end to because he knew the potential of a sequel. Um,
yeah, he was
I
signed on, Robert England, wasn't he, for multiple films before? Like, even though
no
before, no, he wasn't. He wasn't signed on until after.
no nope, he wasn't signed on. Sure, that the whole story with the sequel was that they asked Robert to come back, or they either did ask him to come back, or they didn't ask him. I can't remember. It's something along the lines of they either asked him and they didn't meet his demands, or they didn't ask him. And they actually had a stunt man in the Freddy make in a Freddy mask, and there's a shot of him in the second movie. I won't tell you what scene it is. You can tell me if you spot it. And they realized, no, we need Robert England. So I think he get paid a hell of a lot more to do the sequel because Freddy's different than a Michael Myers or a Jason. You can put anybody, well, say anybody,
Well,
but you can put,
it's so funny you said that because that's exactly what they bring up when I was talking about is that you just cast stuntmen for the other movies. And then you actually need an actor who can act because he's got to deliver dialogue.
yeah, well, Robert England brings a certain finesse to this character. The walk, the theatrics, the laughing, the giggles, and then as the series goes on, the wisecracking. He basically becomes the star of the movies. You know what I mean? People come to watch Freddy Krueger kill the teenagers. Do you know, like a lot of slasher movies do? You don't care for the teenagers anymore. You just want to see the bad guy kill them. Whereas this one here, you genuinely care about the story and the journey that these characters are going on. I don't think you're rooting for Freddy as much in this one as you are in the sequels. But the thing was that them other movies, like you could cast a stuntman as Michael, you can cast a stuntman as Jason, but you needed Robert for these movies. And I think Wes Craven that didn't really want anything to do with the sequel. And the thing was, when they made the second one, they broke all the rules. So it got a lot of backlash. But the problem was, well, say problem, the thing was is that it made more money than the first, so they decided to make a third. And I think Wes Craven came back to write the third, help write the third, but he never really got any kind of because this turned into such a big franchise and made so much money throughout the 80s. He never really got a penny of it. And I think that then Bob Shea then retroactively give him some kind of royalties to the franchise, and then asked him to direct Nightmare on Elm Street 7.
Yeah, which is a good movie and it's a nice return. And honestly, I always said that that's like the prelude. Like if you were going to watch Scream, you watch A New Nightmare and see where the ideas started to get planted was with A New Nightmare.
Well, I always say that I think that, especially for 90s horror movies, I think that a great double bill is Wes Craven's New Neighbor and Scream. That is an amazing double bill. They just work so well off the back of each other. And not only that, you were saying there you go from like Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 3. I think watching Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 3 back to back works brilliantly.
Hmm.
It's almost like Exorcist 1, Exorcist 3. Brilliant. Right?
Yeah,
But I also think as well you could watch Nightmare Elm Street 1, 3, and New Nightmare as a trilogy.
you definitely could. You could call it the Heather Langenkamp trilogy. And before we finish up, there is one thing that I was noticing, and you could say, oh, it's not a big deal, and I agree, but I don't think that Heather Langenkamp in the first movie was the greatest actress.
Yeah, do you know what? Because I was actually when I was watching this again at the weekend, and I think that this movie is Wes Craven's best movie, right?
Yeah,
But
100%.
Yeah, definitely 100%. But in a lot of ways, I think that Scream is better made. And even though I believe this movie's perfect, but and they've done brilliant things with Neighbor on Elm Street with the shoestring budget, but with a wee bit more money and better quality actors. That's why I think Scream is better made. And I was thinking about that. People always talk about who's your favorite final girl. I know a lot of people love Jamie Lee Curtis, and I've heard a lot of people say Nancy Thompson. Nancy Thompson as a character, I think, is better than Sydney. What's her surname again? Sydney Prescott. Yeah, but, as a character, I like Nancy better. But the two actresses, I think that Neve Campbell is far better than Heather Langenkamp. So that's my long way of agreeing with you, John.
Yeah, it's just like, when you start poking holes, and I feel bad doing it because, again, with you, I think there's a 5-star horror movie. Just like when you look at it through like a critical lens, you're trying to pay attention to everything. And I'm sitting there watching the scene early in the movie when Johnny Depp's got to call his mother to tell because he's sleeping at his cousin's house and he's got the cassette player going, and she's just sitting on the couch talking and everything, Heather Langenkamp, and I'm watching her deliver her lines, and I'm like, it's weird that they didn't give this one another take because it feels like she's delivering lines in this one sequence while actually everyone around her is doing a pretty decent job.
Yeah, exactly. And funny you should say that because I thought the same thing too. Because, like I say, I'm watching a bit more with a critical eye now. And the thing is that it was the first time that I actually crossed my mind that her performance could have been better in this movie. I tell you something, I think she's horrible in part 3.
She is bad in part 3. I don't think, but really, when you think about it, other than these two movies, do you ever think of Heather Langenkamp? But like you, I've always heard people say like their favorite's Nancy Thompson. She always comes around for the circuit of like, on tour, always willing to do interviews. She's considered a screen queen, but I think there's a reason why she never crossed over into different roles.
Yeah, exactly. No, I totally agree. And she's better in this than she is in the third one. But the third one, I remember watching the third one a year or so ago, or maybe a couple of years ago, and just thinking, she is bad in this. And I think what's charming about her in the original is because she's obviously young in this. Well, I think she's 20 in this movie, but she looks a wee bit younger. But the thing is that she has that girl next door kind of look about her, girl next door quality look about her, and I think that's what it appeals to a lot of people. It's not like she does look 20. Also, I think that the girl that plays Tina gives a far better performance, much better than Nancy, or sorry, Heather Langenkamp at the start of this film. It's a bit strange to see she's supposed to be 15, but she looks about 28. So she does. But
that's an 80s problem.
Yeah, exactly.
It started with Grease when everybody's like in high school, but yet they look like they're older than me.
Yeah, exactly. Because they were, like I said before, they were playing these characters on stage for about 15 years before the bloody movie was made.
Yeah, they're like, oh no, you guys can still do it. It's like, do you want maybe like someone that's like a high schooler or close to it? Because I mean, that guy should be the teacher, not a student.
But they started off teenagers when they were doing it on stage.
Yeah, but yeah, they did get young Heather Langenkamp. She was pretty young and up and coming. And you're right, that's exactly what it is. It's her look. Her look, you can't. And then there's the character's so well done that you can forgive if the acting isn't the greatest.
Yeah, look, there's scenes in this where I think that's what I'm trying to say as well, is that there's certain scenes that, to me, she acts like a younger girl, if you know what I mean. It's not like, there's certain scenes in it where I just believe that she acts like a younger girl, like a teenager should act, and I think that's probably what papers over some of those cracks of not being the best actress.
Yeah, and I think everybody else does a great job in this movie around her, like Tina's performance. Johnny Depp in his small role is fine. We don't see much of Rod. He's gone pretty quick. I always find it strange that like it just was another 80s thing where guys for some reason were dressing like 50s greasers.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that a few people love his line at the start where he says, "Up yours with a flying lawnmower." How when he after Tina's killed and he decides to jump out the window for some reason, and but when John Saxon catches him the next day, he's just running down the street with his leather jacket on and his jeans and nothing else.
Yep. I thought that was just him trying to show off his body, but it is funny how they catch him like that, and he gives up pretty quick. Like, I'm like, you didn't even really do much of an effort to try and run away.
Yeah, well, he's in his feet, his bare feet.
Yeah,
He'd probably
that's
get
true. He
far.
ain't gonna get far.
No, he got further than I would. Fuck that.
I wouldn't have left. I would have been like, I don't know what happened. Like, I don't know who killed it because you do look guilty when there's no forcible entry. Like,
Yeah, well, do you think that's what it is? Because it kind of dawned on me. It was like, why did he jump out the window and go on the run? Is it just that he just thought right away, boom, they're not going to believe that I didn't do this?
yeah, I mean, listen, it's gotta be tough not to believe it because everyone knows him as a hothead as it is, and like they had relationship problems. And that's why, that's what I mean about the horror cliches. That's how we should have known that Tina was gonna die. She breaks the horror cliche right away, and both of them, and they have sex right at the beginning.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I love Johnny Depp's reaction. He's lying on the sofa listening to them, and you can just hear the clock ticking in the background, and it's like 3 in the morning. He's like, morality sucks.
Yeah, and then what rule did he break that he got killed? He
Well,
didn't.
he no, he fell asleep. That's the rule he broke.
I guess. I mean, did he do drugs? He smoked pot at one point? I don't know.
No, it's in the later ones when
Oh,
he's
well, the later
talking
one.
when he does the advert.
This is your brain. This is your
Yep.
brain on drugs, and then Freddy hits him.
The frying pan. It looks like some eggs and some bacon to me.
Isn't Roseanne and Tom Arnold in that one too? There's a bunch of
Yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. But you're right. I just have a soft spot for it, and it's like I torture myself. I watch it anyway, and then I sit through it going, "This is awful."
I look at it as a satire of the franchise because it's a comedy at that point. I mean, he's like, now you're playing with power. Like that's such
Yeah.
a joke of 1990.
There's a couple of dream sequences in Freddy's Dead that I really like. I've some really good dream sequences, but it's the whole kind of him playing it like a Looney Tune and yeah, and the jokes and
He
yeah.
commits. Robert England commits though. He doesn't hold back.
No, I think imagine the freedom he had just to
Oh,
go in and just do whatever he wanted, and I think that's what appealed to him.
he was a pop culture icon at the point, like at that point, I'm sure they're giving him a ton of money.
No, yeah, without a doubt, and he
For a
deserved.
guy, yeah, exactly. I was just gonna say, like, for a guy who struggled for a long time, it sounds like, you know what? Like, yeah, enjoy your break.
Yeah, he did. He deserved it, so he did. Look, I don't mind. I'm not sitting here right now saying that the first one is the only Freddy. I enjoy Freddy in two. I enjoy him in three as well. I do think that three, in a sense, planted the seeds for the beginning of the ways cracking Freddy. I think three got the right balance. It didn't bother me. It got the right balance of horror and ways cracking. It went a wee bit more fantastical than the previous two. But but people hold the fourth one in high regard. I think the fourth one to me is one of my least favorites, and I think the fourth one is the one that really was the beginning of the end. I actually hold the fifth one higher than the fourth one, John. But the
So
problem is,
do I, actually. I agree
do
with you.
do do you? And I just want to say about the fourth one, and it was the intention of the filmmaker. It was the intention of Rennie Harlan. He says Freddy Krueger is the star of this movie. Freddy Krueger is like James Bond, and that was the beginning of the end. And I don't know. I mean, I was very young back then. Probably didn't know what Nightmare on Elm Street was in 1986 or 87. But you know, maybe Rennie Harlan was right because by that stage, I think he did have the TV show, and he was a pop horror icon, and it was all just about Freddy. It was no more about the supporting characters. It was just people wanted to see Freddy. So maybe he was right. And I know that the fourth one probably made the most money out of the original franchise than any of the other movies in the series. So I mean, it paid off in the cinema for him.
Well, yeah, I like to think. I think the three is when the turn happened, right when the iconic line, "Welcome to prime time, bitch." I was like, that's that. If you wanted to put a pin in a moment, that's the moment where Freddy turned. And the reason why I don't like four, I like one sequence in four. I love the time loop sequence. I think
Mhm,
that's brilliant. I love that.
mhm.
But what kills it for me is we kill off everybody who survives at the end of three. And I actually watched for the first time three and four back to back. So I could specifically remember being like disappointed that they killed them all and they recast, which is understandable. But like it's just when you watch those movies back to back, It's very similar to like watching like Aliens and like Alien 3 back to back. It's like, okay, so everything I just saw is pointless.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? In hindsight, if I was to sit down, I mean, if they were going to make that girl Lisa the new Kristen, Kristen,
Oh,
because Nancy
yeah.
did Kristen. Why didn't they just write Kristen out of the story completely rather than recast her? Do you know what I mean? And people don't like that. When I mean, I love the likes of Kincaid and well, okay, Joey survived, but I loved Kincaid in part 3, and I think it was pretty sad that they decided to kill him off at the start of the film, and how Freddy comes back as well is ridiculous.
Oh yeah, I know. Like how that it's insane because but again, this is something that they did at the beginning of every single one of these movies. We think he's dead, now he's back for some reason. That's where the trope comes in. Like these guys are never dead. But Freddy, it's always like we make up a new rule that can kill him, and then we just outdo that rule in the next movie right at the beginning.
But they had it. But the thing is that I say I'd love to do the sequels some stage, John. I'm sure we can get around it. But what I like about the third one, you're saying about the original one, it was supposed to be a standalone, and it's left ambiguous, and it's great. I love ambiguity in certain films where you can discuss it, especially a movie like this, which has a fantasy element to it, and it's to do with dreams and reality and stuff like that. So we can sit here and say, did Nancy survive? Was she dreaming? Was the whole thing a dream, or was it not? But the thing is, once you start making a sequel and you get to the third one, and then they decided it's almost like, oh, they wanted to make a trilogy. And to me, in the third one, they found a definitive way to kill Freddy, which is by burying his body with the holy water. You know what I mean? And that's it. He was defeated. It's a definitive end. You could see he's dead. But to bring him back for a dog to dig him up in Kincaid's dream and then pee on him for him to come back to life, it's ridiculous. They could have maybe even started the movie where maybe that car lot was being redeveloped and building, I don't know, an apartment block, and they found the bones. And they took the bones out of the ground to do DNA tests, and they found out who it was. And when they took the bones out of the ground, Freddy came back. Do something like that. That's what I'm just throwing up here.
I mean,
Something.
your idea is way better than what the fuck they came up with. That's just your classic 80s executive doing a line of coke and just being like, no, this is what we're gonna do, and then like the filmmaker being like, all right.
Yeah. Well, this is why I don't like Rennie Harland, because I'm just like, you're a hack. You know what I mean? I didn't like what you done with Nightmare on Elm Street 4. I don't like what you done with Deep Blue Sea, and I don't like what you done with Die Hard 2, and I don't know why everybody loves them 3 movies.
Die Hard 2 is just Die Hard again. I don't understand that. At least when you get to Die Hard with a Vengeance, it's a different movie and it's actually got something to say.
Exactly, and that's why I'm saying he's a hack. He just takes ideas that people have done, and people have done them better, and rehash them, and then say it's his own.
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. But you know what? You know what does make sense? The original Nightmare on Elm Street. So at
Yeah.
least, even if the sequels, whatever you think of them, the original one's still an all-time classic to me. It's a 5-star film. It's the best in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise by a mile, in my opinion. But I know, like, you love the entire franchise. I love still going back and watching, like I said, 1, 3, and 6 every single year. This year I will do 2 again, but it just will never take anything away from what the original is, and how it made me fall in love with horror movies and just going to Blockbuster and pulling that off the shelf.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm with you there. I totally agree. And as I say, I was probably already on the road to love and horror with the other movies I watched when I was a kid. But this is the first proper horror franchise that I watched, and these are the ones that I think converted me into a full-fledged horror fan. And I totally agree with you. It is a masterpiece. It is one of the greatest horror movies of all time, and it's up there with your Psychos and your Exorcist and your Alien and your Halloween. It's an all-time classic movie.
Yeah, I completely agree. And this isn't going to be the only horror classic we talk about this year. David, why don't you tell them what we're doing next?
Yep. On our next episode, we're going to get a young priest and we're going to get an old priest, and we're going to perform an exorcism on this podcast so we can try and get rid of the bad demons.
That's right. We're going to be talking about William Friedkin's The Exorcist, which I got to be honest, I can't wait to watch that this week. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching it again myself, mate. I think I watched it last year as well, but it's a great movie. It's one of those movies as well. I'm sure we'll get dive deeper into it next week. But the thing is, it's one of those films as well that the more I watch it, the more I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm excited for us. This will be our first Friedkin that we've done, and I've wanted to talk to you about William Friedkin for a while because I do. We'll save it for next week, but I got to ask you about Sorcerer just because I know it's got one of your guys in it.
Oh yeah, so Sorcerer is it's an underrated gem.
Oh, the third act to that movie should be brought up more than it is because it's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, that's a movie that I discovered through Roy Scheider initially, but seeing that William freaking directed it, that adds something else to it. It's like, oh, not only is Roy in this, but William freaking directed it, and I think it's one of his it's one of his it's a forgotten movie that he actually made. Everybody always thinks about the French Connection and The Exorcist, but Sorcerer is very good. And I think as time goes on, more and more people are discovering Sorcerer and appreciating it.
Yeah, I mean, it's got similarities to The Exorcist, especially with the opening. And, if you like that kind of like almost documentary film style that he has, there's no reason to skip over Sorcerer.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's he applied that documentary style as well to the French Connection, and I'm not sure if anybody ever done it before him. I'm sure they did, but he brought those sensibilities to his filmmaking, which made them very realistic and very gritty. And I think that's what kind of um, touched a lot of people when they were watching because his films felt so real.
Yeah, and it's coming right out of the 19th. Right as film was changing, he was like a perfect 1970s director.
Yeah,
Much like Wes Craven, honestly, like with Last House on the Left, like it's very that gritty style. It's just Wes Craven's very much able to adapt to the times. I think William Friedkin had a lot more trouble with that.
yeah, I think so. I think it was just a lot of directors like that genre of their time, and they find it hard to change with the landscape, the film changing landscape. And Wes Craven, as I mentioned at the start of the podcast, 100%, he was able to create a classic in the 70s and a classic in the 80s and then another classic in the 90s. But not only that, he was able to propel the horror genre forward each time with these movies. It wasn't like he was doing the same thing over and over again.
No, that just shows you how smart of a director he was. I put him like, obviously he's to a much lesser extent, but a lot like Steven Spielberg, where he's able to adapt with the times. And I think it comes down to the intelligence of the director.
Yes, very much so.
So, but anyway, guys, thank you for being here with us on another episode of the Let's Talk podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as we did making it. And if you did, like, share, and subscribe, and tell your friends about us. Hey, everyone. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. It is Friday, and that means it's time for our digital code giveaway. In every single video that we do here on Friday, I'm going to ask you guys 2 digital code giveaway questions. All you got to do is answer one of those in the comment section below. As long as you do that, you come back to Tuesday's video. I put your name on a magic wheel. I spin that bad boy 2 times. The 2 names it lands on, they have their choice. The digital codes that you've seen on your screen before you today. And we just got done talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street, so I want to know from you guys, what is your favorite Nightmare on Elm Street film? Is it the original, or is it one of the other sequels, or is it the remake? I mean, I won't judge, but I do despise that remake. But hey, if it's your favorite, it's your favorite. I won't take that away from you. And I also want to know from you guys, who is your favorite slasher villain of all time? Is it Freddy Krueger? Let me know those answers down in the comments section below. And then while you guys are down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And we have channel memberships, guys. So if you want to become a friend of the channel, a producer for the channel like John Doe Juggalo and Jason Martin, you can do that. Or you can even become a channel director like Mr. Smelly Potato and Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews. John Doe Juggalo and Frank have great YouTube channels as well that you should check out. I'm sure you guys have seen Frank here on the channel many times. We do a live show every Tuesday, so definitely check that out and just head over to the channels. I promise you, you will not regret it. But if you got no money to throw away, guys, don't you worry about it at all. We just hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.